Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines this Wednesday evening. Back to sea. P&O set sail across the Channel with new staff on board, while many of those sacked attend a jobs fair in Dover.
They've all rallied together, put this fantastic event on to try and get our guys back in employment, which is really good, especially for the people's mental health at the moment.
If you're struggling with the cost of living, we'll tell you about the Household Support Fund and how your local council in the South East can help.
Also tonight, find out why these lifeboatmen are skipping out to sea on the country's longest pier.
And the professional gamer turned marathon man from Sevenoaks, who's a winner on the treadmill and the console at the same time. Good evening. As P&O ferries resume services between Dover and Calais, the Transport Secretary says the firm should hand back the £11 million it was given in furlough payments.
Grant Shapps also says the company will be forced to pay all its workers the minimum wage after it sacked 800 people to re-employ cheaper agency staff. As Sarah Saunders now reports, many of those 800 still haven't found new jobs. And we're at a jobs fair in Dover this morning, desperate to find work.
The Spirit of Britain heads for Calais loaded with freight. And P&O Ferries' aggressive strategy to keep its business afloat seems to be working. Freight company Alkaline, based in Lymm, can't afford to be sentimental. They will be using P&O to send their lorries across to Europe.
Ultimately, hauliers will go to the first available ferry operator when approaching the ports. So I think in the long term, people will forget about the situation that they've been in, and obviously will be heavily reliant on the first come, first service.
But while P&O sets its sights on new horizons, scores of sacked workers are still looking for jobs. Former Deck Petty Officer Lee Davison, who worked for P&O for 30 years, is grateful for this jobs fair event in Dover today.
Fantastic, absolutely, what a confidence booster. You're walking around here now, we're seeing all the different companies that have got vacancies, and they've all rallied together, put this fantastic event on to try and get our guys back in employment, which is really good, especially for the people's mental health at the moment.
Honestly, it's brilliant that something like this has been arranged and that all seafarers got welcome to it.
Everyone from Border Force to colleges and other ferry companies were offering opportunities.
Well, of course, they've got experience of operating this sort of route. It's a very intensive route. And of course, they come in and they have DFDS training, but they already have a good understanding of what's required.
I've been round this morning already asking all the stands how many jobs they've got, and the total, there's over 1,000 jobs on offer today. So we wanted to do something to help the people of Dover.
With the Dover-Calais service resuming, a question hangs in the air.
Have they got away with it?
No.
Transport Secretary Grant Shapps again today called for P&O boss Peter Hebblethwaite to step down and said the company would have to pay its workers the minimum wage once new legislation was introduced.
In my view, though it's a matter for P&O themselves, I think that they need to repay their furlough money as well. And it's around £11 million. I don't think it's right that having claimed that money, they then sacked the workers in such a premeditated way.
Unions insist P&O Ferries has sunk to depths it must not be allowed to get away with.
Over now and Sarah, tough talk there from Grant Shapps. So are the unions impressed with the line that he's taken with P&O Ferries?
Well, the sentiment behind that tough talk is very welcome, but the problem with it is, at the moment, it's just that, talk. The government can't force P&O to repay furlough payments that it was legally given. Peter Hebblethwaite's already made it absolutely clear he has no intention of stepping down. And even those minimum wage payments. Now, the government has said it intends to force P&O to pay them, but at the moment the ship is sailing and the legislation, well, it's not in place yet.
And P&O themselves, what have they had to say?
Well, they came out fighting today. They said while their decisions have been unpopular, they have saved 2,200 jobs and they've saved a British company. This is how they're describing themselves. P&O Ferries now is modern, dynamic, competitive and viable. We meet customer needs flexibly in a way that has not been possible in the past. Our morale is high and our spirit as a company is strong. Work there from a company that has suffered some severe reputational damage recently.
Sarah in Dover, thank you. Investigations are underway into a crash in a car park in Crawley in which an 18-year-old woman was killed. Locals say a car and a pedestrian were involved in the collision in the Gossips Green area. Police were called there early Monday morning. 2 men arrested have been released under investigation.
TV personality Katie Price is to face a Crown Court trial. She's denied breaching a restraining order against her ex-husband's fiancé over a message in which she accused the pair of having an affair. Price, who lives at Partridge Green in Sussex, appeared before Crawley Magistrates Court earlier.
The Archbishop's Palace in Maidstone could soon house a boutique hotel. Councillors have approved plans which include restaurants and bars. The historic building will remain open to the public, though.
Now, this week, we've been looking at some of the announcements from the Chancellor's spring statement last month and the early signs of the impact they're having on helping us through the cost of living crisis. Tonight, we're focusing on the Household Support Fund.
Yes, at the dispatch box in March, Rishi Sunak announced the government was doubling the fund to £1 billion to help those struggling the most with energy bills, with councils in our region allocated more than £112 million of that. Our reporter Amani Khan has been investigating to see whether the funding goes far enough.
Putting our heating on shouldn't be a luxury. It really shouldn't.
Jo Barker-Marsh says she's already in debt due to rising energy prices. She's a single mother whose 12-year-old son has a disability.
I shouldn't be waiting for food vouchers from school so that maybe we might get a good shop this week, because these are all sticking plasters. This is not a long-term solution. And I would like to see benefit cap lifted, and the uplift, which was never an uplift. It wasn't even close to bringing us on par. I would like to see the £20 back, because giving me food vouchers doesn't put shoes on my son's feet.
Amongst the initiatives to help people like Jo, announced during the Chancellor's spring statement last month, was the expansion of the Household Support Fund, initially set up last October.
So I am doubling the Household Support Fund to £1 billion, with £500 million of new funding.
Unlike the other cost of living schemes, this fund is distributed by our local councils, who are also tasked with identifying those most in need.
The first thing is that the Household Support Fund, it isn't the right way to get money to families who need it the most. And the second thing is that it's not enough money anyway. From our perspective, what the government really needs to do is to increase all benefits to match inflation, and that's going to be around 8%. At the moment, all they've done is rise it by 3.1%, so that's leaving families with a real terms cut. So what the government has done just isn't sufficient.
In total, our councils in the south-east of England have been allocated more than £112 million from the fund. But it's not open to everyone. The process of applying is slightly different depending on where you live, but wherever you are, you'll be applying through your local council. It's all assessed by your financial ability to meet your basic needs. In some places, you'll need to be over 16, in others over 18 to apply, depending on your council's rules. In some places, you need to be claiming national benefits first, and most will reject your application if you have savings. You'll need your national insurance number to apply, as well as details of your earnings and expenses. If your application is rejected, you will be given 7 days to appeal.
And there needs to be a recognition, I think, that as a result of the last 10 years of funding cuts, councils themselves are under-resourced and are being asked to support the government on this agenda, the cost of living agenda. They're also being asked to help with the Afghanistan resettlement, the Ukrainian resettlement, and a whole range of other things that councils do day in and day out. At the moment, I'm seeing a perfect storm of issues and demands and challenges, but not the resources to deal with them.
A government spokesperson told ITV News that they recognise the pressures on the cost of living and say they are doing what they can to help, including spending £22 billion across the next financial year to support people with energy bills and cut fuel duty. Jo has applied for the Household Support Fund, but doesn't know yet if she's been successful, or if she is, how much she'll receive. Amani Khan, ITV News.
A man who stabbed his neighbour in an unprovoked attack has been jailed. 66-year-old David Graham from Rustington pleaded guilty to grievous bodily harm and was sentenced to 90 months behind bars after the assault in November last year.
Sussex Police has reiterated its support for victims of stalking during National Stalking Awareness Week. In the year to this March, there were more than 4,000 recorded stalking and harassment crimes across the UK. That's a 4% increase compared to the previous year.
Brighton's Open Houses arts movement is preparing to celebrate its 40th anniversary. The annual festival takes place next month with a series of special exhibitions among the work of professional and amateur artists on display in homes around the city.
Morris dancing will return to Rochester this weekend. The three-day International Sweeps Festival had to put its 40th anniversary celebrations on hold due to the pandemic. Folk dance and music will entertain spectators invited to witness one of the largest Morris gatherings in the world.
See, that just says spring to me. Love it.
Does. Ever tried it?
I have tried it, actually. It's high energy.
I was not expecting you to say that.
Yes, no, there's not much I haven't done, but you are watching ITV News in the Meridian region coming up.
The men with the yellow boots putting out a mayday for lifeboat crews around the country.
And there's a definite buzz coming from the weather inbox today. I'll be back later with bees and bank holiday forecasts.
And for more on all of our stories, please go to itv.com/Meridian. You can call us on 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us. Please go to Facebook, Twitter and our Instagram.
Now, there are new calls to level up the countryside and unlock the rural economy, which could be worth up to £43 billion.
A report out from a group of cross-party MPs says a lack of direction means that rural issues are falling through the cracks.
But the government claims they are committed to improving the lives of people living in the countryside. Catherine Walker has this report.
Poor planning, bad connectivity, lower wages and fewer job opportunities. The gap between life in our region's cities and the countryside is said to be deep and growing.
It's all the infrastructure, the network around us.
It's a divide that's increasingly frustrating for Helen. She runs a farm close to the city, but while her metropolitan neighbours have great internet, she's left struggling with slow speeds.
It's a bit like going back 10, 15 years, you know, you sort of go to download something and you're sat there waiting for it to finish downloading. Sometimes it doesn't finish at all, you know, it's back to the days where you go and get a coffee each time you wait for a picture to download. It is just incredibly slow and we're running along behind trying to keep up.
Productivity is also a problem for farmer Stephen. He says increasing house prices, combined with low wages, have driven people and workers out of the countryside.
The community is massively less, and there is a lot of holiday and second homes who contribute a bit to the rural community financially, but very, very little. So the productivity side disappears because there isn't the people up here to be able to do it.
These challenges have now been examined as part of a cross-party inquiry into rural productivity, which found that skills, training and public services are much harder to access here in the countryside.
The report claims that a lack of government direction is holding the countryside back. The rural economy was found to be 18% less productive than the national average, and only 46% of rural areas have good 4G. Overall, it's one of the most comprehensive looks into rural life that has ever been produced. And Tim from the Country Land and Business Association in the South East hopes the government pays attention.
What it fundamentally shows is that for a number of years, the countryside has been almost forgotten by central government and its policies. And this report, unlike the Levelling Up paper previously, actually shows that this is the case and actually outlines a number of recommendations to hopefully re-engage the rural economy.
Can more be done? Of course it can be. This whole Levelling Up agenda should be seen as levelling out as much as levelling up
levelling out of the towns, out of the villages, right up into the valleys, so everybody, wherever they live, can have access to proper services, can deliver an enormous boost to the UK economy by making these areas more productive.
Unlocking the countryside economy could be worth up to £43 billion. But the report is clear. There needs to be a change in direction if the government wants to harvest a new rural powerhouse. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Now the ITV Evening News continues with the details about what's coming up on their programme. Here's Mary Nightingale.
The government's policy of discharging patients into care homes at the start of the pandemic broke the law. Thousands of residents died as COVID tore through care homes. Families say their relatives were abandoned and left unprotected. You will have the very latest on the investigation into whether a Tory MP watched porn on their phone while sitting in the Commons. Councillors in York vote on whether to strip Prince Andrew of his freedom of the city, and
I have lived in Newcastle all my life.
Yes!
But for some reason, I still haven't picked up the accent.
This Britain's Got Talent star is inspiring others to find their voice in the right accent, of course. Do join me for those stories and much more at 6:30.
Thank you. Now it's home to the busiest coastal lifeboat station in the country, and with the weather hopefully warming up next month, crews at Southend are expecting to get even busier.
But to deal with the increase in demand for its services, the RNLI is putting out a Mayday call of its own as it launches a new fundraising campaign. Charlie Frost explains.
Dover Coast Guard Southend LB2 arrived on scene with the casualties.
Cut off by the rising tide, these summer swimmers relied on Southend's lifeboat crew to save them. It's a common call for the service here when the weather warms up. But something that happens far less often, pulling on their well-known yellow wellies to walk Southend Pier, answering a very different Mayday call.
Yeah, so the Mayday Mile is geared around fundraising for the charity. It doesn't have to be a walk, you can run, you can skip, you can hop, anything to make it fun, but we want as many people to get involved as possible.
And skip they did. Southend Pier measuring up at 1.33 miles, the perfect place to launch this fundraiser. The idea for people to get sponsored to do their mile anywhere they like next month in May to support the RNLI's life-saving work. Southend is the busiest coastal lifeboat station in the country, crews launching 147 times last year. And across the UK and Ireland, RNLI crews and lifeguards saved more than 400 people in 2021. The charity says demand on its crews is at a high, with the figure it needs to raise to run the service at £180 million a year.
For us to be trained as volunteers with no maritime experience up to fully competent crew, that involves a lot of training, and the public support is what keeps us going.
It's not cheap to maintain the 4 vessels we have here, so you count all the number of vessels across the UK and the management behind that. We need to raise as much money as possible constantly, because one day it could dry out and we'll be struggling.
But even fully kitted up, life jacket and all, something Frank and Pat haven't struggled with is finishing their mile.
Fantastic, guys. Congratulations, you finished. You walked and skipped just over a mile, so tell me how it was.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. It's so nice being outside, raising money for charity.
Any challenges? Was the kit a bit heavy? Did the feet hurt a bit?
It's not heavy, but a bit of welly rub here and there after that long journey, but yeah, it's all good.
Wellies maybe not the best footwear if you're planning on doing a mile to save lives at sea. Charlie Frost, ITV News in Southend.
Could you skip a mile? I feel I could if I
told you can do anything, me.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we've already covered this, of course. But you've probably already done it.
No,
yeah.
I haven't.
Anyway, good stuff. Now, playing video games to earn money for a living. Have you done that?
I can play video games, but
Okay,
not
fine.
for a living.
Not to make a living, but for many young people, that would be the ideal dream. But for Charlie Halford from Sevenoaks, it's a reality.
Yes, the 21-year-old started gaming full-time in 2020, attracting more than 125,000 subscribers on Facebook, turning a hobby into a career.
And Charlie's using his following to fundraise for 2 good causes by taking on a rather unique challenge. James Dunham reports.
Can you actually quite believe what you're about to do?
No. It felt like a really good idea when I came up with it.
Charlie's game wave came before Christmas.
Today I'm going to be playing Warzone while running on a treadmill.
Having tackled the treadmill whilst taking on one of his favourite titles, this gaming pro unsurprisingly wanted to level up. So then came the ambition to do this for 26.2 miles.
I really like to push everything to the limit. And bearing in mind I was like very overweight at that point, drinking a lot and very unhealthy, everyone kind of turned around to me and went, "Charlie, there's not really a chance, mate."
Wearing some questionable footwear in a wet Whitstable, training's been tough, but he's been spurred on all the way.
Come on, lad. Just trying to break the stigma of you just sit in your mum's basement and play video games for a living, like to playing video games on a treadmill in your mum's basement for a living.
Because you've got the cameras on and it's streaming live, you probably don't want to show yourself falling off a treadmill.
I mean, all I'm saying is if we get featured on You've Been Framed, the 250 quid can go to the charity.
With sensible shoes on this time, Charlie was off.
It's actually not as bad as I thought it would be.
It was a steady start. This was mile 3.
This is the wall.
By mile 16, the race and pace really picked up. The 21-year-old's motivation, the veterans' charities Combat Stress and Blesma, who will use Charlie's fundraising to buy gaming equipment.
A lot of our members link up through gaming as a way to manage their mental wellness. For me, it's a very fitting way for somebody to raise funds for us and for us to utilise their funds the way they raise them.
When the finishing line came, so too did the exhaustion and emotion.
Charlie!
Over £12,000 and counting raised. His marathon effort over, Charlie's mission complete.
Well done.
James Dunham, ITV News, Sevenoaks.
He did an absolutely brilliant job, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to be on a treadmill and then to concentrate on winning a game. Amazing, Charlie. Well done.
Great stuff.
Philippa is with us now.
It's been a bit quiet weather-wise, but that's been bringing out the bees, which is a good thing.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I don't know about you. I've certainly noticed a few more bees buzzing around, but I tell you, someone who got more than they bargained for, Mike Bean in Kingswood in Kent. Take a look at this video footage he sent in. Now, Mike was enjoying some sunshine on Sunday in the garden when he was joined by this swarm of honeybees. They were looking for a new home. Mike thankfully called on a local beekeeper who was able to collect them and take them to a suitable safe home. The beekeeper estimated there to be around 5,000 bees in this particular swarm. Now, swarming doesn't usually last long, maybe 15 minutes or so, and the bees eventually stopped for a rest, and we can see they did for Mike. This is a picture of them just before collection. They've clustered on the tree there in his garden. Now, of course, we had ideal conditions for bee swarming on Sunday. It was dry, it was sunny, temperatures were quite high as well. And of course, we're moving into the warmer months, so prime time. If you do see a swarm, first thing, don't panic, although probably easier said than done. Yeah, absolutely. But they're just looking for a home, so as long as you don't get too close, don't provoke them, they're fairly harmless. If you find they've clustered and they're in a space where they might be vulnerable or they're causing disruption, then get in touch with your local beekeeper and they can come and move them to somewhere that's a lot safer for everyone involved.
Oh, Pip, that's really good advice. And you mentioned warmer days. The bank holiday's coming up. Warmer weather?
Well, not too much warmer, but certainly very settled. I think temperatures around about average, that kind of mid to high teens, so not bad in the sunshine. Of course, it sounds like good news, but it's good-ish. We've still got some chilly nights, so not great for those tender plants. And I don't know about you, but my garden can certainly do with a drop of rain. It has been very dry so far this month.
It's been a few weeks now, haven't we, since we've had like a decent...
swings and roundabouts, as is always the way.
We'll take goodish. Goodish.
Yeah, goodish, yeah. We want it, you know, we
better
need that. We've got to think about our plants. Philippa's now here with your full forecast.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Lots more settled weather on the way over the next few days then. Plenty of dry weather in the forecast, quite a bit of cloud, but still some bright or sunny spells to be found. However, the nights will continue to be on the chilly side, and that could well be the case overnight tonight. So today's cloud is now dispersing, leaving us with dry and clear conditions overhead, and it's underneath those clear skies where we could see temperatures in rural spots dipping pretty close to freezing by dawn. That in turn perhaps giving rise to a little patchy frost and even the odd shallow mist or fog patch here and there as well. But all of that will soon melt away tomorrow morning. Actually a pretty decent start, some lovely sunshine around first thing, but I think we will tend to see a bit more high cloud drifting around tomorrow, and that in turn making the sunshine rather hazy at times. All in all though, I think for most of us brighter than it has been today, and temperatures as a result just a shade higher away from that cooler East Kent coast, highs inland around 15 or 16 degrees. Looking at the high tides for tomorrow for both Sheerness and Chatham, just the one around the middle part of the day, and then beyond that plenty more dry weather, a bit more cloud as we head through the bank holiday weekend, and still those chilly nights too.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
We've just been talking about how they collect bees, and we've established that we don't really know. So we're not going to speculate.
No, but I've established that both Pip and Matt know an awful lot about this.
But we don't have time for
Apparently
it now.
you have to find the queen bee if you want to collect them all up. Anyway, see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.